Bonjour à tous, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir Tony Drummond de l'Université de Californie, Berkeley, qui va nous parler de machine learning et deep learning pour améliorer les pronostics et diagnostics patients.
Bon, d'abord, je vais changer un peu la langue parce que pour moi c'est plus facile de faire l'exposé en anglais parce qu'il y a beaucoup de mots techniques. uh, et- so I teach at the University of Berkeley, and I teach in a master program. And what I would like to talk about is what we are doing. Sort of a lot of what is happening in Berkeley is really creating links with industry and creating a lot of incubator projects. And our masters is really enabling people that had degrees in biophysics or biology, chemistry, or physics to become acquainted with high performance computing. So they get a degree, a master's that is oriented for software engineering. And that's really what I'm going to talk about. And one of the examples towards the end, I'm going to focus on some of the machine learning applications for in medicine. So yeah, so this is sort of like the outline of my talk. And out of the projects that we had this year, I'm going to focus on the Brain Network Lab, which is one of the collaborators, and we have 5 projects with them. So the focus of our masters is really to, we call it professional masters, so it's less into doing open research, although the projects that I'm going to show today are with students that are doing open research. These are more professional in the sense that they work with, for instance, in our cases, you're going to see companies like Merck, pharmaceutical companies that have specific projects, and those are the ones that the students work with. The target areas, of course, we start with software engineering. Then there are many in computational sciences. Because they come from science degree, when they come to computational sciences is that a lot of the courses that we teach are all a mix of everything related to molecular sciences. So it's what changes is the different scales. So we actually have our courses are some are oriented to the different molecular scales, and some are oriented more towards the software engineering. Things that have become very popular is anything that has to do with data processing, data analysis, machine learning, deep learning. Just 2 years ago, most of the students we were doing, real physics problems using, grid point models. But nowadays, all the attention on the students, the jobs that they have been getting are more or are demanding more machine learning and deep learning applications. So this is just as a reference because I know that trillion in Europe means something different, but in the United States is 10 to the 12. So these are sort of like the industries that we sort of survey when we were sort of looking at different projects. Now in Berkeley, we have something that is called the Lawrence Hall, and the Lawrence Hall is to form sort of interactions between the research and the industry, and there are several new companies that come and incubator companies that are part of that project. But this is just in general, what gets invested in those companies, and those are what the sort of like the job market and where the big applications are coming from. The big challenges that we are solving and that we are interested in, obviously, for in 2024, a lot of our projects were either material sciences, especially working in improved solar cells, battery, um, extending the life of the batteries. There were a lot on health and aging, and as a matter of fact, the projects that I'm going to talk about today are more in the area of health and aging. There are a lot of drug discovery, and that's one that is being very common. Every year we had at least one project that is related to drug discovery. And then other things that are interested are in food and water security and climate change. You can imagine that there are a lot of different problems that are there. So how do we choose which problems we work every year? Is that depends, so the students, when they are in the second year, they sort of get to see what projects these different companies in these different areas are proposing. And since I am in charge of doing the matching, what I do is that I ask them to look at and say at least 3 problems that they would like to work. And we sort of try to match them with according to the companies that are requesting. And the companies also have a way to interview the students and see if they are a good match to work with them. And it just happened that this year we were only concentrated in the top 2 applications. And here are some of the examples of the partners. And so, for instance, Atom Consortium is a big consortium of national laboratories with some incubator companies. Merck, which is a big company. Sapient Technologies, they do a lot of the research that they do is classified, but they do a lot of, and there are a lot of very interesting things to talk about what they are doing, but that's completely classified. So the only thing that I'm allowed to tell you is that they were one of the partners with us. And obviously the USF Brain Network, which is part of a very large effort that UCSF is the University of California, San Francisco, and we work at the University of California, but in Berkeley. So our collaboration with them, it started with this department, but there are other departments, especially. So UCSF, what they do is basically medicine. So everything is for medical application. UC Berkeley, we don't have any medicine. And then Pivotal Life Sciences, they also do, that's also another startup company, and they are interested in medicine, in pharmaceutical products, and doing a lot of research at that level. So what are these projects? What do they look? So obviously, what you're going to see in most of them, the common thing is that there was a lot of software engineering. So it's not only, using the libraries, but often it created the frameworks, the artificial intelligence framework that involve machine learning, AI, and deep learning. And so for some of these projects, it started with capturing the data, filtering the data, or doing any data wrangling before they apply any of the deep learning or machine learning in their projects. So here are some examples of the projects we had. So we had 22 different students. Some of them were grouped in different projects. For instance, this group here, what is very interesting is that, so most of them, this is for drug discovery, or also to see the effects of treatments and therapies that are followed over time. One of the projects. Um, for instance, this the therapeutic target identification. It involved, comparing a lot of different machine learning algorithms and models, and so you needed to create sort of like a platform. And once that platform was in place, so the students created the software engineering. So then you can just switch different algorithms. You can imagine that in terms of software engineering, that meant creating the classes, hiding all the levels of parallelism that you can exploit on that. And then what the company gains is that they get this platform, and the platform is now open source. And the products are things that the company later can use and integrate other methods, new methods. And actually, there is a list of things that while they were doing this research, they found, but they were, the capstone project just has a limit amount of time, so they needed to really finish their research. And the other two had to do also with drug discovery. These two are very interesting because both of them use these large language models, LLMs. And in these two, for instance, Merck is interested that their scientists, depending on different areas in the company and working with different parts of the company, they can review different papers, articles that come, and the idea is that they could reduce the amount of time that they do the research that they do papers that sometimes it can take up to 7 to 3 years just reading, going through the literature and use AI to sort of classify things once they know the entire process from production, from design of the drugs to production, which papers are the most relevant, and that is done using the LLM. And on the opposite side, so this is another project from Pivotal Life Sciences, which also work in doing that kind of work, drug discovery. But Pivotal, what these are, because it's a startup company, what they are interested is, what is the market saying about the drugs, what the different drugs, and where should they put their efforts. So they wanted an LLM that basically read financial data related to drug companies and sort of gives them keys on where they should invest before they produce the pipelines for any of the drugs. So one of the areas that I had not mentioned is healthcare and medicine, which is really an area that I mentioned at the beginning that is big, but was not in our radar because we all had sort of like in the biotech and pharmaceutical. But obviously, the healthcare industry, at least in the United States, is about it's expected that it's going to reach even 21% of the GDP, and when I'm talking about this is the government spending on healthcare, and we know that as you know, we don't have a comprehensive healthcare as other developed countries, but because it's private, so people do pay. So this is on top of this is really what the government spent, just the government part. So the hope is that there's a lot of interest. And a lot of people had been working for a while with a lot of statistics, on treatments, medical care. And what AI is now feeling is, really going to the testing and going through genetic histories and basically working on preventive care and post. Yes, the Augustine.
I have a question regarding the data, because here in Europe, it's always a problem with getting these data. They are often very heavily protected because of data protection. How is the situation in the US? Is it easy to access data to clinical trials, prescriptions, and all that?
Oh, so that's interesting. Yeah. So no, but I'll talk about that when I show some of the examples. But you're right. So that's one of the big challenges, and I'm glad you mentioned that because there are a lot of these projects now on AI are facing that challenge. I mentioned, for instance, the LLMs that learn from reading articles, financial articles, but a lot of the articles now, some of them have the protection that said this article cannot be used to train any model. So you're missing all that information. So part of what we're thinking is in different ways that you can capture that input that by asking people that have read the article to summarize those articles and learn from those summaries, and then get the AI model to produce some summaries, and people classify those summaries. That's one example. But when it comes to medical, one of the issues and the main issue that is going to be common through all the five problems that I'm going to show is the access to data. Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit more. Yeah, but it is a major issue. What the UCSF, the university, they they have state of the art medical facilities, and it's quite popular, in the area that people want to go there. One of the things that they do tell patients is that their data is going to be masked, but it's going to be used for research purpose. So that people have to sign the consent to make that data open, with the understanding that your personal information that links you to that data is not available. And some of the projects that my students were working, the issue was just the cleanup will take months, and the whole process is very lengthy, and they didn't have the time to really wait for that data to arrive. All right. So as I mentioned, one of the areas is in healthcare. We started partnering with the Brain Network Laboratory, and I followed closely these five students because I was we had sort of like a partnership where they get assigned mentors at UCSF at the medical center. In this case, was this lab, which is called the Brain Network Lab, and also has the name Raj Lab. Um, so they had different mentors there, and at the UC Berkeley side, I was the mentor that worked with these particular students. So I'm going to explain what Nexus is, but basically, we are interested in this particular problem to look at brain degeneration. So all diseases that are caused by the degeneration in the brain, in particular, one big will be Alzheimer's disease. And so all these projects are related to Alzheimer's disease in one way or another, although not necessarily that being so these are the five projects that students work on. The first two, and you see the word mouse there, and the reason is because there are at different stages of the data. One of the most recent advances in sort of like in brain research, especially for degeneration, involves different kinds of models, combining different kinds of models. And for humans, which are the three projects that are under, we don't have the same amount of data, or we cannot do the same kind of experiments. So a lot of what these projects do is that they use computer in silicon sort of models using data that has been produced is either images that you take from actual patients, or in the case of the two above that, they are based on mice, experiments, and obviously, those are in vivo, so these are actually labs where people are performing this, so they can do, uh, inject these cells or proteins to the mouse and see how they spread in their brain, and so that data, the amount of data that one can capture from those two, we don't have that experience yet, or that level of experience, the gene exposure to the human. So lastly, so one of the reasons is that we are interested and continue this collaboration uh, with Professor Ahmad to be able to do this, the United and Conquer algorithms, apply UC for anomaly detection, and just as critical as we did with the other projects is that we had there are all these ML and deep learning algorithms, but what is key is to find out how do you do the actual integration. So find the right integration for these UC methods into our parts that we want to apply anomaly detection. Okay, and with that, I'll stop and I can answer questions if anyone.
So you mentioned the collaboration with NAID and Maison de Simulation and so on. Do you have other international collaboration, especially in neuroscience, or because I have in mind some teams in CA who are
really
leading teams in this.
The same question.
teams.
So it's interesting because there is another. So with this group in Valencia, Spain, but what we are doing is something that I didn't want to mix it, because it was going to be like a potpourri of so many different. But we are doing the machine learning is for from X-rays or CT scans. So this project is to propose that you reduce the dose of radiation that you apply when doing those scans, and you get not a perfect image, but then you can use AI to ameliorate the quality of the image. So instead of applying it to the patient, you use it to recover a lot of that lost information. Yeah, but I think that in terms of this research, it will be interesting, to find collaborators. So if you know people,
we have a team in CA
really?
called Neurospin, where we have the largest MRI instrument.
Yes.
And we have also some teams specialized in Alzheimer disease, but essentially based on analyzing MRI images with also artificial intelligence methods, and also doing some cross analysis using both neuroimages and genomic data and so on. So we have a large team about this kind of topics. Okay, I think. Yeah. And when you present the diffusion model for the finding the connectome inside the brain, we have also a team doing that.
Right.
That's exactly.
So nice.
Exactly the same topics, but much more focused on MRI images.
Oh, all right.
You have a CEA video on YouTube, perhaps one of the last ones that explain all that stuff with the.
So that'll be great. Thank you.
In this room, and then.
So I probably watch it.
Right with them.
I would like to learn.
And we have also a strong connection with European project eBrains, which is following the HVP Human Brain Project.
Oh, right.
So the next project, so the HVP project has finished last year, at the end of last year. So we launched a new European project called eBrains. That's more dedicated on, let's say, digital infrastructure in order to collect all data and the softwares which have been collected during the HVP project. And so NCA is leading the eBrains project, and we have also some national initiative about brain diseases and so on. So a large ecosystem.
Oh, nice, nice.
Label.
So I'll check it. I'll check
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That'll be great.
I will send you some some interesting contacts.
Right. No, that's great. I appreciate it. Because one of the things that is what is happening now with the big explosion of AI is that there are people are very, very careful about the data. No?
Yeah, sure.
So even if you get the models, but maybe here you have better access to data, and so the models are not as performing.
So
we
we have some data, and we have developed some models quite interesting because we based on Alzheimer French national plan launched in 10 or 20 years ago. So they collected some data specific to Alzheimer diseases. And this is the memento cohort. And we are also connecting some studies on open biobank, UK biobank, and other large biobank, which are, let's say, quite freely available. And also a large also expertise in how to collect the data and how to curate the data in order to make some comparison depending on the how we do acquire the data in order to be able to compare the different.
That's key. That's key. Yeah, that is key. Yeah.
I know some person from Neuroscreen who tried to connect, but in the end of your presentation.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
You present your second project with the seeds, and that was very interesting. And I was wondering, will you try to do some ensemble of simulation with various seed position, and then try to compare to the real population diseases, and to discover perhaps the best seed position with that stuff?
Yes. So you know what? So obviously this is not my field of expertise. Okay. But the neurologists, they have narrowed down that the tau formation starts in so we have tau concentrations, in our brains. So the problem is with this tau tangles, and apparently there are certain regions where it starts. It starts. What people that are doing research in this area, they know is that where it starts could have an influence on the rate of spread and how fast it will degenerate. And also, so obviously a lot of what I was talking about are for people 65 and older, just because that's one of the demographics that they have, or they've been working at the age center. But obviously you have all the onsets that happen to people at 50s or 55, very early on that. And there's very little data that you can correlate. And we didn't even enter. So in the gene, sort of looking at the gene expression, so it's not only about the genetic composition of the cells, but it's also the next thing to consider is also the environment. The presence of where the cells in that particular area of the brain are, what are they exposed to, what are the elements that are causing that. And that's going to be, I think it's interesting. It's interesting and requires a lot of data and a lot of experiments. Yeah. Unfortunately, the only way that they can do it is to do it, like if you do it like in vivo, you will do it with rats, and then you sort of study and see, and there's a lot more data in that respect. But it's hard to correlate, that with human just because, the type of brain and the kinds of activities. Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. But at least it did early, for instance, it did show that it was important. The tau concentrations were relevant
Thank you.
So thank you for the talk.
Thank you.
My question is in the framework you develop with your team. Say, how do you control the quality of the model you produce at each step? In particular, for the how the user of the software can know if the accuracy, or you mentioned, for example, the loss, and you can control a little bit the quality of the model by input with the Nexus model.
Yeah.
But in general, in the framework, how do you propose the control of the quality?
Because that's sort of part of the validation part of the neural networks or the machine learning processes. Now, so what you do is that when you start doing your predictions, you sort of compare that and measure the errors, from the actual data that you have. For instance, so in one of the last models, I talk about the cognitive, scores, the cognitive scores. So you do all this process, and then you compare to the cognitive scores being the last step. But in between, the LSTM, when you train the model, so you train the model and you use, different folds, and different tests, and then you repeat, several epochs of that, and then once you see where the variations are. Obviously, if you are getting errors that are consistent, then you sort of know that is a little bit more stable, or that is completely unstable. No? You find out that if you vary, one of the things that here is that obviously we have one data set, or you have one large data set, and because you don't have somebody inputting new data, what I normally do is that you sort of split the data. You said this is how I'm going to train the neural network, so you use a certain amount, and then once you train the data, the neural network, then you have the other data set, the other part of the data set, which you want to make the predictions with, and you can use that to compare, the quality of the performance of the model.
Because my next question is, so I understand this, but if you control the quality of the model, then you create your model, and then you inject this model to create another model, as far as I understand, for the project 2. Yeah, you mentioned that in your
right.
You construct a model, and then you use it to construct another model.
Sorry, yes.
And it's why I asked the question.
Okay.
At each level of your framework,
Right. Okay.
how you control. So
Okay.
you give an answer, but now my question is to go further.
Right. So
In your conclusion, you say that you can use parallel computation to improve the time consumption for the training, but the point is that if you control the quality of the first model, for example, you can also know when you have to stop to train, and in order to reduce the number of training in the first model, or the other case is that you know that you have to have more and more training to have a better model for your next one.
Right.
So it's the goal of my question is. Now, in the current state of your work, do you have this kind of control, and do you think that you can use it to improve the consumption?
No, they are not there. They are not there because, so these were two different students, although we're working as a team and, collaborating. For instance, the loss functions are very different, So initially the idea was, hey, let's use the same, so both were going to be PIN models, physics informed neural networks. But for the one that goes back in time, you need to have accurate data to be able to do that regression and produce something that is useful. And even, I myself, looking at the results and trying to understand those results. So the idea was for this second model that does the forward predictions was to use that the output of the first model as a seed to say, hey, if I start from here, but remember that you sort of have some data, actual data that came in. So you want to use this seed and see if it's better that if you use this seed plus the data that you have, you make a prediction, if it's better than if you just use this data and make a prediction. But to do this part, it will require a lot of time, trying to understand, and I think that one of the things right now, because both models are using different loss functions, and is kind of they are not there. I mean, so one thing that I was saying is it's almost like the software shell to be able to do it is there, and they work in a way that they could do it, but error propagation, understanding the error propagation will require that we know very well what's happening in the first model and how those seeds are much better than finding or doing some random seeds.
Thanks for the answer.
Yeah, but that was one concern, and I was very for me, because of the students. I think that the experience that I was satisfied from that having was first to have the experience of working in a project together where they were trying to make decisions and inform each other. But the math, that goes in the middle, that's something that will require a lot more time. And the people at the Raj lab, they have 3 people that are really tops, in doing that kind of modeling, and they knew, but they did want it to have the software that they can start playing with before they can formalize that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Yes.
Just 2 remarks. I think there is a very big difference between professional MS in UC Berkeley and in France. In my knowledge in France, this is 2 parallel things: industrial work and academic work. This is not the case of your professional master.
Right.
It's very different. I think it's very good project to have involved industrial people and students.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
And for the network of cells, this is my second remark. Search with some of his colleagues, I think perhaps you, and some former students proposed a matrix generator to represent the connectivity of brain cells. So this matrix generator is a distributed matrix generator.
Oh.
It's very useful.
Right.
I think you can download this matrix generator in Germany, from Germany.
Oh, okay. No, I'm interested because that's one of the things that I think is the next.
I thought that it can be interesting for.
These are huge, and one of the things why they decided not to touch the MRIs were just because of the size of the data.
Yeah, I think it's good if you can succeed in having a matrix generator will generate data which are quite consistent with real data.
Yeah,
it's a way to generate some synthetic data.
Yes.
And nothing since we have a lack of good data, it's another way in order to enrich the data at the basis for deep learning and model.
Right. Yeah. So, and interesting will be also when you partition the data sets, like when you train the data sets for this kind of data. So you have the data comes, but you have to sort of, you cannot do it randomly, random selection, you know. And the reason is because you may be picking a lot of data from one particular patient, which is going to skew the training completely. So you have to be aware that you're not picking data from this. In that minute, then you're not doing anything that is completely random. You know? So, and that sort of changes.
You have also the control on the sparsity rate. You know, it's for your example, it's very useful.
Yes. Yeah. So this is so you know, because I come from research, although I know that I'm talking to students that are not interested in doing research, that they really want to get the job done and figure it out, you know, and even if I said, you know, like for instance, one thing at the very beginning, before all the projects started, you know, in the 22 projects I said, you know, all of you are going to be working with machine learning and neural networks. They take a long time. So, you know, do an experiment, get to know how long does it take to train the data. And everybody, oh, I'm doing it in my laptop. And of course, 1 month before, you know, finals, people started panicking and saying, oh, you know, I don't know, you know, I have to use a supercomputer. And they were trying to learn how to use the supercomputer at the same time that they were supposed to finish the projects now, and transferring the data and all those things. But even their mentors at the companies is very interesting. I have another colleague who is also a scientist, and she does a lot of research, and she's been mentoring like the people at Merck. Merck has a terrific group of people, you know, it's very professional, but they do a lot of research. So they are used to work with research software, and but the others, they don't have. So for instance, they may have a scope for a project without having an idea of what it takes, you know, to do that. They may read a paper and thought, oh, if I just do, you know, somebody gave me the software, so I should use that software. But then you have the students, you know, do a good job with that. So they do have to spend some time in research. Yeah. So it is a big contrast, and it's the faculty is divided because you have people that are in that spirit that have been hired and they are more professional, like, you know, let the students use ChatGPT or Copilot, you know, and get the code done and move. And you have people like myself that are always, you know, no, let's try to understand what are you doing, you know, what the numerics are. So they get a little bit of the two. Yeah.
Check if there's a question online. Question online? The chat? Yep. So I think we can thank Tony again.
Oh.